I had always loved my home. It wasn't just a house, it was my sanctuary, a place that felt uniquely mine in a neighborhood where everything else looked the same. Every morning, I'd sit on my porch, coffee in hand, enjoying the quiet hum of suburban life. But one morning, everything changed. As I shuffled outside to grab the mail, I noticed an official-looking envelope tucked between the usual junk flyers. The bold letters on the front made my stomach tighten. Cedarwood Heights Homeowners Association, Compliance Notice. I already knew this wasn't going to be good. Tearing it open, my eyes scanned the letter, and with every word, my blood pressure ticked upward. Dear Mr. Reynolds, it has come to our attention that the exterior color of your home does not align with the approved color palette outlined in the Cedarwood Heights HOA guidelines. I stopped reading. I didn't need to see more to know where this was going. They were telling me to repaint my house. I clenched my jaw. My house had been the same light blue for the past 5 years. It wasn't an eyesore. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't neon green or covered in graffiti. So why was this suddenly a problem? My fingers tightened around the paper as I skimmed to the end of the letter. You are hereby instructed to repaint your home in an approved color within 30 days to avoid fines and penalties. Fines? Penalties? Over my house color? My stomach twisted in frustration. This had Karen Whitmore written all over it. Karen was the newly elected president of the HOA, and ever since she took over, the neighborhood had been drowning in ridiculous new rules. She sent violation notices like they were coupons and patrolled the streets like she was a suburban dictator. I wasn't going to let this slide. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and dialed the HOA office. After being put on hold long enough to question all my life choices, a cheerfully fake voice greeted me. Hello, this is Karen Whitmore, president of the Cedarwood Heights HOA. How may I assist you today? I could already picture her smug smile on the other end of a line. Karen, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm, I just got a letter about my house color. Can you explain to me why this is suddenly a problem? She sighed like she was talking to a misbehaving child. Mr. Reynolds, under the revised HOA guidelines, all homes must conform to a uniform color palette to maintain neighborhood aesthetics and property values. But my house has been this color for 5 years, I argued. Nobody's ever had an issue before. Well, she continued in that condescending tone, we're just trying to keep the neighborhood looking its best. You understand, don't you? I gritted my teeth. Oh, I understood perfectly. So, just to be clear, I said, as long as my house is repainted in an approved color, I won't face any penalties? Karen's voice turned syrupy sweet. That's correct. As long as you follow the guidelines, everything will be just fine. Good to know, I replied. And then I hung up. Because now I had a plan. They wanted me to paint my house? Fine. But I was going to do it my way. The moment I hung up the phone, I knew exactly what I was going to do. They wanted me to repaint my house? Fine. They wanted me to follow their ridiculous rules? Even better. But they never said what shade I had to choose. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the Cedarwood Heights HOA website, scrolling through their approved color palette. As expected, it was the most boring list of colors I had ever seen. Warm taupe, soft gray, muted sandstone, classic beige, 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 beige. That was their entire personality. I leaned back in my chair, drumming my fingers on the desk. They wanted conformity, but what if I gave them something they'd never forget? And then, like a bolt of lightning, the perfect idea struck me. I opened a new tab and started researching the wildest, boldest, most obnoxious paint colors I could find. Within minutes, I had a short list. Electric pink, neon green, jet black gothic, a full rainbow gradient. But then I found it. The masterpiece. A ridiculous, completely over-the-top color known as unicorn barf. It was a chaotic explosion of neon pinks, purples, blues, and yellows like a rainbow had thrown up on a wall. I couldn't help but grin. Would it match the neighborhood aesthetic? Absolutely not. Would it technically be a new paint job? Yes. Would it drive Karen Whitmore completely insane? Oh, you bet. I could already imagine the look on her face when she saw my house blazing like a Lisa Frank fever dream in the middle of a beige wasteland. Laughing to myself, I grabbed my phone and dialed the number for Bright Co. Paints, the best local painting service in town. A cheerful guy named Danny picked up. Hey, Bright Co. Paints. What can we do for you? Yeah, I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. I need my house repainted as soon as possible. But I have a very specific color request. Danny didn't even hesitate. We can match any color. What are we working with? I sent him a link to Unicorn Barf and waited. There was a long pause. Then Danny burst out laughing. Dude, this is insane. Can you do it? Hell yeah, we can do it. I grinned. Perfect. Let's set it up. It was game on. I woke up early the next morning, barely able to contain my excitement. Today was the day. As I stepped outside, sipping my coffee, the familiar sight of my calm, blue house greeted me one last time. It had been a good color, simple, respectable, and most importantly, completely harmless. But now it was time to turn this neighborhood upside down. At exactly 9 a.m., a large bright coat paints van pulled into my driveway, and out jumped Danny and his crew, grinning like they knew they were about to commit a crime against suburban conformity. Danny whistled as he looked at my house. All right, man. One last check. You sure you want to do this? I didn't even hesitate. Absolutely. He chuckled. All right then. Let's make some history. And with that, his team got to work. The first few hours went smoothly. The painters started with the base coat, covering my entire house in a bright, obnoxious neon pink. As the roller brushes glided over the walls, my house transformed from a respectable suburban home into something straight out of a candy store. And that's when the fun started. At first, it was subtle. A few neighbors out for their morning walks paused mid-step, their eyes widening as they took in the sight. One old lady actually clutched her pearls. Then came the whispers. I saw Mrs. Thompson, the elderly woman across the street, peek out from behind her curtains, her jaw hanging open. A man jogging past literally stumbled and almost fell face first onto the pavement. By noon, the rumor mill had officially exploded. I stepped inside for a quick lunch, but when I came back out, there were already small groups of neighbors gathering on the sidewalks, murmuring and pointing at my house like it was some kind of alien spacecraft. That's when I spotted her. Karen Whitmore. She was storming down the street, HOA clipboard clutched tightly in one hand, phone in the other. Even from a distance, I could see her nostrils flaring like a bull ready to charge. I smiled to myself. Showtime. She arrived in my driveway just as Danny and his team were finishing the first layer of rainbow streaks. The neon pink base was now swirling with bright blues, purples, and yellows, creating a chaotic masterpiece of color. Karen stopped dead in her tracks. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I decided to help her out. Morning, Karen. Lovely day, isn't it? Her eyes darted between me and the house, and I could practically see the vein popping out of her forehead. What is this? I gestured proudly. My new paint job. HOA approved, of course. She blinked like she'd been hit in the face with a brick. This is a joke, right? No joke, I said, barely holding back my laughter. You told me I had to repaint my house. So I did. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. This is completely unacceptable. The HOA will not allow this. I folded my arms. Really? Because I checked the rules. There's nothing saying I can't use these colors. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. She had nothing. I watched as realization dawned on her face. She had tried to force me to comply with the HOA's demands, but I had found the perfect loophole. She had lost, and I wasn't done yet. Karen stood frozen in my driveway, her eyes twitching, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For the first time since she took over the HOA, she had been outplayed, and she knew it. But Karen wasn't the type to go down without a fight. She adjusted her HOA badge, took a deep breath, and snapped back into dictator mode. Mr. Reynolds, she said, gripping her clipboard like it was a weapon, you know very well that this monstrosity violates the spirit of the HOA guidelines. I raised an eyebrow. The spirit? Karen, last I checked, rules aren't about spirit. They're about what's actually written. And unless I missed something, there's no rule against these colors. She hesitated. I could see her mentally flipping through the HOA rulebook, desperately searching for something. Asterisk, asterisk, anything. Asterisk, asterisk, that could justify shutting this down. Finally, she narrowed her eyes. I'll have to review the guidelines further. But I can assure you, the HOA will not allow this to continue. And with that, she spun on her heel and marched off, furiously texting on her phone. Game on, Karen. The HOA's emergency meeting. By the time the painting crew was finishing the final psychedelic rainbow swirls, I had already received 3 emails and 2 voicemails from the HOA, all marked urgent. I ignored them. Instead, I grabbed a cold drink, set up a lawn chair, and admired my absolute masterpiece. My house now looked like a Lisa Frank folder exploded on it. It was a blinding mix of pink, blue, purple, and yellow, with bold streaks running in chaotic patterns. It was beautifully obnoxious. And the best part? It was completely legal. Just as I was about to kick back and enjoy the view, a shadow loomed over me. I looked up to see my neighbor, Greg, grinning like he had just witnessed history. "Dude," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "That's the greatest thing I've ever seen. You actually broke Karen." I laughed. "Not yet, but I think I'm about to." Because at that very moment, I got another email notification. Subject: HOA emergency meeting, immediate attendance required. I cracked my knuckles. Here we go. Karen tries to change the rules. That evening, I walked into the HOA meeting with my head held high. The room was packed. Every board member was there, along with half the neighborhood, who had shown up just to witness the drama unfold. At the front of the room, Karen sat rigidly, her laptop open, her expression a perfect mix of rage and forced professionalism. She cleared her throat. "This emergency meeting has been called to address the situation regarding Mr. Reynolds' house." A few chuckles echoed through the crowd. Karen ignored them. "The HOA board has reviewed the matter and determined that Mr. Reynolds' house violates the aesthetic integrity of our community." I leaned back. "Oh, which rule exactly does it violate?" Karen clicked her mouse furiously, then turned her screen to the audience. "As you can see, our guidelines clearly state that all homes must maintain a uniform aesthetic in alignment with the neighborhood's traditional color scheme." I smirked. "Right. And does it say anywhere in those rules that a homeowner can't use multiple colors?" Silence. Karen's jaw clenched. She clicked a few more times, scanning the document like she was trying to will a rule into existence. Finally, she huffed. "Well, no. But then I'm in compliance, aren't I?" She looked like she wanted to strangle me. The room erupted into laughter. Greg, who had taken a seat in the back, whistled and clapped. Karen slammed her laptop shut. "Then we'll just have to amend the guidelines," she snapped. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several homeowners looked uncomfortable. That's when I went in for the kill. I stood up and turned to the crowd. "Listen, folks. Today it's my house color. But what's next? Your garden? Your patio furniture? The kind of car you can park in your own driveway?" People nodded. I could see the shift happening. Karen had pushed them around for too long, and now they were realizing it. "I followed the rules," I continued. "If Karen and the HOA can just change them whenever they want, then what's stopping them from controlling everything about our homes?" Karen's face was burning red. Greg stood up. "You know what? He's right. We should vote before making any rule changes." A murmur of agreement spread through the room. More neighbors spoke up, questioning why the HOA should have that much power. Karen's smug confidence wilted. She had lost, and she knew it. Karen's face twisted into a forced smile, but I could tell she was barely holding it together. The room was against her. She had spent years controlling every tiny detail of this neighborhood, from the color of front doors to the height of garden gnomes, but today, she had met her match. Me. And the best part? I hadn't even broken a single rule. She cleared her throat, gripping her clipboard like it was a life raft. "All right, fine. If the community wants a vote, then we'll have one." I folded my arms. "Sounds fair to me." Karen glared at me, then turned to the crowd. "All in favor of amending the HOA guidelines to restrict multicolored homes, raise your hands." I held my breath as a few hands went up, but not as many as Karen had expected. She scanned the room, her eyes darting back and forth, desperate for more support. Then came the moment I was waiting for. And all opposed. A sea of hands shot up. Even some of Karen's usual supporters hesitated before slowly raising their hands. It was over. Karen knew it. I knew it. And now the entire neighborhood knew it. She let out a frustrated sigh, slamming her clipboard on the table. "Fine," she muttered through gritted teeth. "The motion does not pass." I couldn't help but grin. Victory. Of course, Karen wasn't going to let me off that easily. The very next morning, I received a violation notice from the HOA, a desperate attempt to find something, anything, to punish me. Violation: excessive visual disruption to neighborhood aesthetic. Fine, $500. I burst out laughing. First of all, excessive visual disruption? That wasn't even a real rule. Second, I knew exactly what to do next. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer friend, Mitch. "Hey, Mitch. Quick question. If an HOA finds someone without a legitimate rule to back it up, is that legal? Mitch laughed. Oh man, sounds like someone's mad. Yeah, that's completely unenforceable. They'd get shredded in court. That's all I needed to hear. I drafted an email attaching photos of the violation notice and highlighting every vague, made-up rule Karen had pulled out of thin air. I ended with a simple message. Unless the HOA can provide an actual bylaw that I've broken, this fine is invalid. Any further attempts to harass me will be met with legal action. I hit send. And just like that, the fine disappeared. A few weeks passed. The HOA tried to pretend nothing had happened, but something had changed. People stopped fearing Karen. Neighbors who had been too scared to push back started questioning the HOA's ridiculous rules. A few even challenged old fines and had them reversed. And then the final blow came. One morning, I was watering my lawn when Greg walked over grinning. Did you hear the news? He asked. I raised an eyebrow. What news? Greg handed me a letter from the HOA. I scanned it quickly, then froze. Karen had resigned. Effective immediately. I couldn't believe it. The neighborhood tyrant was gone. We had won. And as I stood there, staring at my beautifully obnoxious rainbow house, I couldn't help but smile. HOA tried to control me. I trolled them instead. And now, I was finally free. The day after Karen's resignation, something felt different. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt alive. People were outside, chatting freely. Lawn chairs and decorations that had once been considered violations suddenly reappeared. Homeowners who had spent years walking on eggshells finally relaxed. And my rainbow-colored house. It was still standing proud and bold, a symbol of resistance against ridiculous HOA tyranny. I sat on my porch, sipping a cold drink, watching as Greg and a few neighbors walked over grinning. So, Mr. HOA Slayer, Greg joked, what's next? Gonna paint your driveway neon green. I chuckled. Nah, I think I've made my point. But truth be told, the point wasn't just about my house. This whole experience had taught me something bigger. For years, people like Karen had used fear to control us. She bullied homeowners into submission, forcing them to follow ridiculous, nitpicky rules that had nothing to do with maintaining the neighborhood and everything to do with power. But the moment we pushed back, the moment we refused to be scared, her power vanished. And that's the real lesson here. HOAs can be useful when they stick to protecting the community. But the second they start abusing their power, homeowners need to stand up and fight back. Because at the end of the day, it's our homes, our property, our lives. We should be able to live in them without fear. One last surprise. A few days later, I got a letter from the new HOA board. At first, I thought, oh great, here we go again. But as I opened it, I saw something that made me laugh out loud. Dear Mr. Reynolds, we wanted to thank you for your unique contributions to our community. Your bold house color has become somewhat of a local landmark. In light of recent events, we have decided to adjust the guidelines to allow more homeowner creativity. We also want to formally invite you to join the HOA board. Sincerely, the new HOA leadership. I stared at the letter, then burst out laughing. Me? On the HOA board? After everything that had happened? I smiled and shook my head. Yeah, I think I'll pass. For now, I was just happy to live in a neighborhood that was finally free. And as I leaned back in my chair, watching the sun set behind my ridiculously colorful house, I knew one thing for sure. I had won.